Hi, it's Dr. Parikh. Welcome to Writing in Psych. It is 2020 or later, and I wanted to go over there's some changes. Every time I run the course, I learn, and in person courses, it's really easy to just update things, but with videos, it's really tough to add those little things in. So there's not enough changes to be worth redoing the entire course, but I wanted to highlight some things that are going to be different. First of all, if I update a video, you will very clearly know because I will not have my purple glasses. So everything 2019 or earlier, not ev- everything from the previous version of the course had purple glasses, but my child helpfully broke mine, so now they're blue. So you know based on the glasses when something was recorded. So if it's purple, it's meant to be part of the original series. If it's not purple, it's either much older or newer. So a lot of changes also happened because the new edition of the APA manual came out. So if you have the blue edition or the red edition, that is old. And usually being one or two editions behind is not that big of a deal. But for a publication manual, there are meaningful changes when they update. And so if you do not have the seventh edition, really don't trust what's in your old ones. If there if you don't want to buy the new edition, don't try to buy a cheaper old edition. Just use the library. The Psych Suite might have one or two new manuals floating around, or you can always come to my office. Also, there's already going to be a lot of resources and materials on the new edition. So it's similar enough that I don't need new videos, but it's different enough that I did redo some templates, and the way that you cite and do your reference list is a little bit different. So when you're looking at sample papers, don't format based on old sample papers. Make sure that you are using the templates and do use them. I made them for you to use, and I've yet to hear another, I can't guarantee you that professors are always going to be fine with it, but I've yet to hear a professor who thought it was a problem. Mostly they're happy when they open a paper and see that it's done right. I've also so the updated templates, if there was a change, it'll say 7th edition in the title, but I think I've tucked away all the old ones now so that you shouldn't even see them. And then in your readings list, I've updated it for the 7th edition. Sometimes they organize things a little differently. They have some new resources. So if you look at the videos, or sometimes somewhere in Blackboard, I might not have fully updated what you're supposed to read. I'm going to try to catch all that, but sometimes I just don't. And so just follow the to-do list. The weekly to-do list, let me show you where that is. That's in a different place than it used to be also. This I meticulously go through. That doesn't mean there's not mistakes, but it means there's the least mistakes. So this I've gone through, and again, you'll see 7th edition. So everywhere I update, I'm going to put 7th edition. So if you don't see 7th edition, you know it might not be updated. And if it just kind of starts in a weird spot, that might be a hint that it's an old version. So templates, almost every assignment you do has a template with it, and throughout the last semester, I've tweaked it just for ease of use. So I've tried to make it more clear. I also found I used to have some weird like fonts and shadowing to try to separate my comments from what you're supposed to do, but then those fonts and shadowing made it into final papers, which is problematic. So I've tried to make everything just plain Times New Roman 12 point, either single spaced or double spaced, but no funky stuff because I don't want I don't want my template to be what throws off your paper. Assignments, I always am trying to find the best way to balance time. It's a very busy class in person and especially online, so I'm always trying to give assignments just enough time to get done. So you might notice I might have moved things a few days here and there. Again, the weekly to-do list should be the most accurate, and hopefully it matches Blackboard. If you ever notice an inconsistency between Blackboard and the weekly to-do list, please email me right away because that's a problem. If you notice an inconsistency between the video and the weekly to-do list or Blackboard, that might just be where I've updated it. I've tried to figure out a way that's going to work a little better. So the weekly to-do list is the biggest guide, but let's say on Blackboard, I say that something's due next week, but I really meant for it to be due this week. That's potentially misleading and confusing, so I'll usually try to do something to work with that. I usually try to, if it's in, if that's something, if I notice in week 2 that a week 7 deadline is off, then I will probably hold you to where it's supposed to be. But if it's pretty close and I realize that someone going off Blackboard would have legitimately missed it, I'll usually try to give at least partial credit, if not full credit, for doing it by the Blackboard date. But in this class, I really recommend you use the weekly to-do list. There's a lot going on, and Blackboard's systems for showing you things can't always keep up. I realized that it's really, really much easier to comment in Google Docs and to make suggestions in Google Docs than to do it in Blackboard. So if you use Word or something else, it's fine to just upload that file. But if you're using Google Docs anyway, please, please, please include a link where I can go in and make sure you give permissions to comment and make suggested edits, because the system works so much better than Blackboard. But you always still have to upload a document, because that's what works with the Safe Assign, which checks your work. It also protects your work from future people finding it and turning it in as their own. And also it gives me a timestamp, because Google Docs, if you attach a file, like a Word file, that file doesn't change. But a Google Doc, you can keep working on. So that way I have a timestamp of what was this document like at the time that it was due. So it's not required at this point to use Google Docs, but just honestly, you'll get better feedback because it's easier for me to make the feedback. And I don't always do feedback, but just it's a good habit, so that if there is something that I want to try to explain or help you fix, it's just so much easier. I talk about, so for the literature review, we essentially go through and grade it together. I walk through it with you. I show you what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and I go through the rubric and explain why I'm choosing different things. Because you're an online class, I feel that it's important to give you an option that's not live. So I will make a video for you if you really can't meet with me. But these meetings are so powerful, and I don't want anyone to miss out on it, because being able to go back and forth just makes such a difference. You being able to ask me questions, us being able to work together on how to make things better, it just is incredible. I don't think it matters that much whether we're side by side or meeting over video chat with the document up either in a Google Doc or sharing our screen somehow. So it's not about having to be on campus with me. So go ahead and look now, see if there's a time that you can make. If none of the times I offer at all work for you, talk with me about what kind of time you would need. So for example, if you would need something on the weekend, I might be able to make that happen, because if I have it up in my calendar, I'm going to try really hard to be available if somebody books it. I'm not, I would really prefer not to meet on a Saturday, but if that's all that works for you, I'll do it. Because I really think that an interactive meeting is much better than a video. But if nothing works out, and even in my in-person classes, I've had times where somebody is just really sick with a stomach bug or something, and I'll say, look, I'll just make you a video. It's not as good, but it's still a lot better than written comments. And then the research question, especially in the online class, but in the in-person class too, if you don't have a clear research question figured out, it makes the rest of the paper really hard to write for that second half of the class. And the issue is, we're not a research methods class. That's not our focus. And so students often really struggle with that. Not everybody, but I'll have lots of people who sail through the first or second try, but then I always have a couple people who really just have trouble figuring out how to make their, maybe their paper doesn't lend itself well to the questions, or maybe they're just not grokking what's going on. And so with the research question for the online class, I think my guideline is going to be you still submit the initial assignment the same. You make 2 suggested questions. I really recommend using measures that I've put together the information on, because there's rules about what to measure and how to use it and what kind of information you need to write it up the way I want you to write it up. And that way you have all of that information there. I used to try to work with students to kind of go back and forth until they could come up with a question that works, but it's just too far out from the purpose of this course. This course is really about writing, and the research question is a way of getting to writing. So send me 2 research questions. They can be similar. They don't have, just not identical, but they can be pretty close. And then I will assign you a final research question based on that first submission. For my in-person classes, I'm not sure if I'm going to try to go back and forth a little or just do the same thing, just assign them a question after the first time. But for online, definitely, I think that's just going to reduce the stress. And because when you've got someone who doesn't have that research question done, the next steps are just messy and a disaster. So if things aren't clear, especially if you notice it's an old video, purple glasses, and you're not sure if it's still the same or just if it's not clear, sometimes the video isn't clear. I know there's a couple assignments that didn't go super well the last time, so if they don't go super well again this time, I'll probably remake that video for that assignment. I tried to make the course where I could sub out specific assignment videos. And if something isn't, is much less clear than usual, let me know, because if you're the first one watching it, I might be able to pop up a new video real quick before the assignments do. The fastest, easiest way to ask a question about a video is, something that's covered in a video, is to actually just click through to YouTube and comment on the video. The beauty of that is that then everyone else gets to benefit from your question, because I'll answer it there. And if that doesn't clarify, you can still follow, you can comment again in YouTube or email me, but it makes it public. So it makes it so that everyone else who might have that question can see it. And sometimes, someone might not realize that that's not clear until they see you ask the question. So it's really kind of a charitable act of public good to go in and ask in YouTube. And you can also just click through and see if maybe someone else has asked the question, because I did have a few people ask questions through YouTube already. If you have a specific question, like what does this mean, or is this is this thing that I've written what you're looking for this one part of the paper, you can email me. But if you have a bigger, broader question, like if you feel totally lost, or if you want to, if you kind of want me to check over the entire assignment before you turn it in, that's not really an email question. That's a face-to-face or over the phone question. So you can book a time that's open in my calendar for office hours. You can also email me and say, I want to talk, but your office hours don't work. What's available? And it's good to suggest, 3 or 4 times or days that would work for you. And if you're really lost and you can't meet and it's just, yeah, your best bet at that point. So when I get something that says, how do I do this assignment? I'm really stuck because I've written descriptions, I've made templates, I've made videos, I've written up descriptions in Blackboard. Everything has a rubric for how I'm going to grade it. So you see what I'm looking for on the grading end. And that's not to say that I think they're perfect. It's to say I've already explained it the best way I know how. And it's very unlikely that I'm going to magically do better in this email at explaining the entire assignment. So when you feel so lost that you can't ask about a specific thing, and you've already used all the resources that there are, it means we have to interact. You have to ask me specific things, or we have to walk through the assignment together. Because maybe if I fully explain it again, you can stop me when you get confused, or something. But if none of those are options, the next best thing is for you to email a step-by-step of what you think you're supposed to do. So make your best guess of what you're supposed to do. Because then this is where, we get some back and forth then. I can see where you're wrong, or I can say, yep, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And if you make it a numbered list, then I can even say okay, you're good up until number 3, and then here's what happens. So those are what you can do if you're lost. I am always working to make this course better, so do reach out if there's things that are confusing, or if it seems like there's something that needs to be updated that didn't get updated. I forgot to talk about timing. So initially, I had wanted you to go to the Writing Center really quickly in the semester, but it turns out they don't really set their schedule until the second week-ish, because everything for them is still in flux. A lot of people change classes early on, both, the professors that work, there are some faculty members who work as tutors in the Writing Center also, but even the students, they may drop and add classes, or things may shift. So it's really, you can sometimes get in a little bit in the second week, but I've tried to move requirements back, or maybe it's the end of the first week. At any rate, last semester I had the due dates too early. It worked really well for our class, except that the Writing Center just doesn't start working that early. So I've tried to push those deadlines back, so it's not going to quite match what the videos say. It's not ideal, but it's what's realistic. You can also use the online tutoring through Blackboard. That's always going to be open. And I've had mixes of experiences. Some students had some negative experiences, but I've had more and more students telling me that they're having positive experiences. So you're always welcome to use the online if you want to do it earlier. But I've tried to make the due dates so that you can use the in-person writing center if you can. And I really recommend trying to use them at least once during the semester. You have to do 2 tutoring sessions total. So I'd recommend trying to do at least one live if you can. But again, I recognize that just doesn't work for everyone. Let me check to make sure. Templates, I do, when I notice that things aren't clear, I make changes. So you may see that a template has small changes in the middle of the class. Yep, I think everything else is good. Thanks so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to having our semester. This class is always an adventure, and I'm glad that you're along for the ride.